Okay, where it go?
Good afternoon. It's really delightful to see all of you, at least your pictures. We're thankful that you're with us today. I am Susan Bunting. I'm Delaware's Secretary of Education, and I have the privilege and the pleasure of welcoming you to the Reopening Schools Working Group first meeting. This May 28th meeting is being called to order at 2:00 p.m. This meeting is being held electronically. On March 12, 2020, Governor Carney issued a declaration of a state of emergency for the state of Delaware due to a public health threat. The state of emergency allows all public meetings of executive branch public bodies, including the Reopening Schools Working Groups, to be conducted electronically, either by means of telephone conference call or video conference call. The information regarding this meeting, including information on how to access the meeting electronically, was published on May 21st, 2020 on the state public meeting calendar site. Individuals may participate in this meeting by way of DOE YouTube link or the telephone conference call number that's publicized on the agenda. We sincerely thank you for your interest in this topic. In fact, the interest was so great last week that the hundreds who joined us to listen literally crashed the system and we had to cancel the session. So although this is our second attempt, this is actually the group's first official meeting, and it's being held electronically on a platform that supports a much larger number of participants. I appreciate your patience if by chance we today encounter any kind of technological issue. As a courtesy to others and to prevent unnecessary disruption, I ask that you please mute your mics when others are speaking. So now we need to get to the important part of our meeting today, and that's our call to action. The work of the three working groups couldn't be more critical. I really reiterate my gratitude for your willingness to be a part of this grand initiative. As you know, returning to school in periods of normalcy is challenging, and doing so in the face of COVID-19, a public health epidemic with extreme uncertainties, will be monumentally difficult. In Delaware, we have 140,849 students, 259 schools, and approximately 100 days before the regular opening of the school year. We're going to come together as a state to collaboratively ensure that our students, families, educators, and communities can plan for a safe, equitable, and effective return to school. These meetings are public meetings to provide transparency and the opportunity for the public to engage in the process. In order to enable every participant to have voice, public comment will be accepted by way of email at reopeningideas@doe.k12.de.us or voicemail at 302-735-4244. All comments and ideas will be forwarded to the respective work groups for review and also posted on DOE's website, www.doe.k12.de.us/page/411. So why are we here? Our charge is simply to create the conditions for every K-12 school in the state of Delaware to have a comprehensive, actionable plan for return to school, and to do it quickly once the decision has been made to return to school. The purpose of this committee is not to decide if or when that will happen. The department's goal is always to provide robust, well-researched, thoughtful guidance, research, and resources to districts. And this is our collective task, to guide districts and schools around what they need to consider when making tough decisions. To ensure that schools have what they need to effectuate a safe, efficient, and effective return to school, I need each of the working groups to issue recommendations that can be passed to district superintendents by early July. Specifically, our goals will be to establish role clarity so that superintendents, school leaders, and educators understand their roles and responsibilities in executing a safe, equitable, and effective return to school. We will build actionable frameworks to ensure superintendents and school leaders have evidence-based tools that can inform their local return to school planning and implementation. We will ensure students, families, and educators feel informed, confident, and considered in the return to the school process. So we will operate with certain guiding principles for our return to school. And those include We will be transparent. We will share what we know and what we don't know. We will be clear about what we can control and what is outside of our control. Secondly, we'll be equitable. We will center decisions on what is best for all students, families, and educators, especially those most impacted by educational inequities and COVID-19. Third, we will listen. We will bring together diverse stakeholders and experts to understand the realities on the ground and surface creative solutions. Next, we will put safety first. We will leverage science, data, and public health leadership to inform the choices that we are going to make. And we will be decisive. Given the size and scope of this challenge, we must move deliberately and make, at times, tough choices. We will make mistakes, perhaps, and we quickly as variables on the ground change. And as we've seen in the past few months, things can change day by day. Next, I'd like to ask Christina Loyas, Deputy Secretary, to discuss how we're going to accomplish all of this. Christine?
Thank you, Dr. Bunting. I'm excited to be here today to share the objectives, structures, and procedures as you all begin your work. Committee members, thank you in advance. Your perspective, experience, and input matters. All voices across these working groups will be valued equally. As Dr. Bunting mentioned, each group is tasked with delivering to the Secretary a framework that includes public health considerations that will serve as the pretext for superintendents, charter leads, and principals to begin their planning work. Originally, we had planned to break into separate groups, but have modified our approach to allow all on the call to hear an overview of each group, and we'll have more time during individual meetings in the future to discuss more deeply. At this time, I'd like the co-chairs of each group to introduce themselves, their working group members, and then give a brief overview of their work ahead. We're going to start with health and wellness.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Rodriguez, and I'm co-chairing the Health and Wellness Committee along with Megan Walsh from Nemours. To share a little bit about myself, I've been with the department for the past 3 years, and I currently serve as the Associate Secretary of Student Support. Some of the areas that I oversee are DIAA, Adult and Prison Ed, Driver's Ed, and the Student Support Team, which is made up of our lead counselor, lead nurse, nutrition services, and school climate and discipline. Prior to coming to the department, I served as a special education teacher and as a principal for over 17 years at both the elementary and high school levels. I'm super excited to be part of this team and the important work that we've been charged to do. The Health and Wellness Committee will be responsible for crafting recommendations for a public health framework for returning to school, social distancing protocols across all areas from transportation to PPE to athletics, as well as student and staff social, emotional, and mental health. So before handing this over to my co-chair, I would like to take a minute to acknowledge my fellow team members on the Health and Wellness Committee. Dr. Kevin Fitzgerald, Superintendent Cesar Rodney, Dr. Laritha Odumusu, Executive Director of the Charter School of Newcastle Middle School, Dr. Susan Castro, Director of Student Supports at the Delaware Department of Ed, Stacy Greenlee, Counselor, Polytech High School, Dana Carr, Delaware Division of Public Health, Sue Smith, nurse at Miss Pillion Elementary, Emma Brower, Health Professions Pathway student, Sussex Tech High School, Daphne Carnwright, former chair of the Governor's Advisory Council for Exceptional Citizens and Family Services Program Manager at Autism Delaware, Dr. Maricel Santiago, Director of Pediatrics at La Red Health Center, Reverend Provy Powell of Mount Joy United Methodist Church and Delaware State Board of Education member, Kristen Dwyer, Delaware State Education Association, Representative Valerie Longhurst, Delaware House Majority Leader, Representative Michael Smith, House Education Committee member, Senator Laura Sturgeon, Chair, Senate Education Committee, and Senator Anthony Del Calo, Senate Education Committee member. I look forward to working with all of you. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Megan Walsh, the co-chair, my fellow co-chair.
Thanks so much, Mike. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm Dr. Megan Walls. I'm a pediatric psychologist at Nemours Children's Health System and an assistant clinical professor of pediatrics. My clinical work is in integrated primary care, so I'm in the community along with our physicians to deliver families interdisciplinary care. And as a faculty at Nemours, I have access to our critical care and infectious disease physicians for consultation as we need. Outside my clinical work, I've been involved in behavioral health policy, both clinically and as it relates to education, working with many of the legislators and community partners on these work groups, as well as co-chairing the Data and Policy Committee of the Lieutenant Governor's Behavioral Health Consortium. Mike and I are really looking forward to working together and with our work group to plan on how we can reopen safely and to consider the overall wellness of our children as we work forward. We will be meeting for our work group on Tuesdays starting June 2nd from 5 to 6:30 p.m. and we will make sure the information is forthcoming on those meetings and how to participate. But overall, we're really looking forward to working on this and to thinking about how we can best take care of our kids.
Thank you to our first team. I don't know about everybody else, but already only one team introduced. The amount of wealth of knowledge and expertise that we'll have to share is amazing. Thank you so much. Our next group is Academics and Equity.
Thank you, Dr. Aloyas. Good afternoon. My name is Monica Gant, and it is my honor to co-chair the Academics and Equity Work Group with Mr. Ashley Giska. The charge for our group will be to determine what ensures that every student is able to actively and effectively engage in instruction informed by the public health models of minimal spread, minimal to moderate spread, and significant spread. What information we need to ensure every student is successful through all three models, and what does a strong instructional start to the school year look like for every learner through each model? Just to share a little bit about myself, I am a product of New Jersey Public Schools, a proud graduate of Capital University in Columbus, Ohio, University of Dayton, and The Ohio State University, a teacher for 10 years and a principal for 16 years, both in a very large urban district in Ohio, a principal leadership coach in a rural county in North Carolina, an associate superintendent of instructional services and school performance in Georgia, made up of professional development, assessment, and accountability. And for the past 2 years, the Associate Secretary of Academic Supports for the Delaware Department of Education, which includes assessment, curriculum instruction and professional development, career and technical education, and STEM, exceptional children's resources, and higher education. Before I invite my co-chair, Ashley Giska, to introduce himself, I would also like to introduce the rest of our working group. Dr. Matt Burrows, Superintendent, Appoquinimink School District, Laura Schneider, Principal, West Seaford Elementary, Caitlin Thomas, Teacher, Pathway Student, Smyrna High School, Loretta Gregg, Parent, Lake Forest High School, Dr. Lisa Lawson, Executive Director of Special Education and Support Services, Brandywine School District, Eugene Young, President, Metropolitan Wilmington Urban League, Dr. Maria Alonso, Board President, Academia Antonia Alonso Charter School, Rebecca Vitelli, 2020 Delaware Teacher of the Year, Colonial School District, Stephanie Ingram, President of Delaware State Education Association, DSEA, Allison Castaños, ESL Professor, Delaware Technical and Community College, Gwendolyn Haar, English Teacher, Dover High School, Representative Kim Williams, Vice Chair of the House Education Committee, Senator Tizzy Lockman, Vice Chair, Senate Education Committee, Representative Brian Shoup, House Education Committee member, and Senator Brian Pettyjohn, Delaware State Senate District 19. And now I invite my co-chair, Ashley Giska, to introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gant. It is an honor to serve as co-chair with you on this committee. And I will echo the sentiments of our previous team that the amount of expertise that we have in the Academics and Equity Group is truly amazing. And I'm looking forward to this work. A bit of background about myself. I've served my entire career, 16 years so far here in Delaware schools. I began teaching at the Indian River School District. I then moved to the Del Mar School District. I served as assistant principal there, as well as principal. Then moving to the Laurel School District, I am now currently serving for the past 5 years as the assistant superintendent for teaching and learning and the chief academic officer for that district. Again, I look forward to everything we have to consider around academics and equity for students, and I'm confident that we will be able to create a path forward that's both flexible and will allow students to learn under various conditions or whatever is presented to them as we move forward through this public health crisis. Thank you very much, Dr. Gant, and I look forward to working with the entire team.
Thank you, Academics and Equity Group. So I've been an educator for 25 years in the state of, almost 26 years in the state of Delaware, and know quite a few people across the state, and so excited that I have so many new names on these lists to get to know and learn from. Our next group is Operations and Services.
Hi, Chuck Longfellow here, Associate Secretary for Operations Support for DOE. I've been supporting K-12 and post-secondary education in Delaware for over 30 years, both in the operational and instructional arenas. A little bit about the scope of our committee. To talk about what I support at Department of Education, I have 6 areas: finance, technology, transportation, school construction, logistics, and charter school authorization. The scope of our group, Operations and Services, includes technology, budgeting, procurement, food service, transportation, facilities, and security. So to go down the list of our committee members, first there is co-chair Oliver Gomes, Director of Business Operations, Cape Henlopen School District, and at the end we'll let Oliver introduce himself. I know I saw him come in on the meeting earlier. He wasn't going to be able to make it, but he's here. Thank you, Oliver. We have Heath Chazanov, Superintendent, Woodbridge School District, Dr. Sherry Kijowski, Principal, Cesar Rodney High School, David Hearn, Athletic Director and Driver's Ed Teacher, Delmar School District, Stacy Clark, Director of Instruction and Student Services, First State Military Academy, Natasha Rivera, Transportation Supervisor, Seaford School District, Gerald Allen, HR Director, Newcastle County Votech School District, Christine Bewley, Manager of Information Systems, Red Clay Consolidated School District, Leolga Wright, School Board Member, Indian River School District, Mary Nash Wilson, Senior Fiscal and Policy Analyst at the Office of Management and Budget, Jeff Tashner, Executive Director, DSEA, Delaware State Educators Association, Mike Williams, Delaware PTA Secretary and a parent at the Christina School District, Representative Earl Jakes, Chair, House Education Committee, Senator Dave Sokola, Senate Education Committee Member and former Chair, Representative Charles Postles, House Education Committee Member, and Senator Dave Lawson, Delaware State Senate District 15. So at this time, I'll ask Oliver if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Welcome, everyone. It's a great honor to be a part of this committee. I actually thought it was a joke when I got the phone call from Secretary Bunting, so thank you for that. I've been in state government for 28 years. Starting out in the Office of Management and Budget, and served as a Senior Fiscal and Policy Analyst for many organizations. After that, I went to DelDOT and then to the Department of Labor in administrative positions, always dealing with finance, policy, and operational items. My last 12 years have been with the Cape Henlopen School District as the Director of Business Operations, which deals with all aspects of running the house, so to speak, for the school district, which includes transportation, child nutrition, technology, money, and everything else that goes along with running the organization. So it's been a fun ride for 28 years. This is a new aspect, a new challenge for us, but I know that we are up to the task. I look forward to working with a lot of new faces and trying to address the issues that are facing us.
Thank you, Operations and Services Group. So the collective knowledge of this group is immense. To support your work, we have also are going to be working with Opportunity Labs, a national nonprofit who built the returntoSchoolRoadmap.org at your disposal. So you've already met quite a few people. We have 3 left to introduce to you. The Opportunity Labs team includes Andrew Buher, the former Chief Operating Officer of New York City Public Schools, who led the response to Hurricane Sandy, Dr. Mario Ramirez, a physician who led the response to the Ebola epidemic as the Director of Pandemics and Emerging Threats at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and Cricket Hines, a former Spanish bilingual teacher who has worked extensively as an education researcher and most recently led efforts around providing high-quality instructional resources to teachers at the New York City Department of Education. Each will be connected to one of the working groups and will provide subject matter expertise, support facilitation, and help move each group to final recommendations. To ensure our time together is productive, the working group co-chairs will Send out written materials such as notes, decision points, documents, and agendas 3 days before each meeting for you to review and to reflect on. Working group members, we request that you send questions and concerns ahead of the meeting date. The expectation is that we should closely adhere to each agenda, remaining agile enough to address pressing issues we may not have considered. For consistency and clarity, each working group will be meeting to focus on a public health scenario that Monica had mentioned earlier in relation to their assigned focus. Specifically, those areas include minimal community spread, which means school buildings are open, minimal to moderate community spread, which will be situation dependent, and significant community spread, which would mean school buildings are closed. Essential actions within each of these scenarios that need to be addressed by district and charter leaders first, before school opens, and when school is open and operating, is where we will focus our attention in each meeting. Opportunity Labs will provide recommendations in all of these areas as a starting point. Now, before we conclude, let me turn it back to Dr. Bunting for final thoughts.
I'd like to echo the compliments for your being part of this. I was extremely impressed, and I think you all have been too, by the diversity, the talent, and the experience that our working group members have brought to this scene. I throw in an extra 42 years of experience in schools in Delaware. So I am anxious to see what it is that they come up with as suggestions to help us move forward in making sure that our students get the rich education that they deserve. But at this point, we have an opportunity for our committee members, our working group members, to ask questions. We reiterate the invitation for you to put your name in the chat box, and then Christine is going to announce anyone who has a question or comment regarding the purpose and the process that has been shared so far today. Christine, do we have any yet?
Nope, I do not see anyone. So if there is anyone that is working in the committees that would like to ask any questions of Dr. Bunting regarding what we've discussed, you can just type your name right into the chat box, and that way we can unmute you so that you can ask your question or give a comment.
Good afternoon. This is Representative Mike Smith. I just had a couple questions from folks who reached out prior to this. I understand this isn't the direction or action of this group because we're focused on the public and charters, but where do private schools fit in? Are they going to have to follow the recommendations of our group? Do they have flexibility in that? They just had questions, so I wanted to make sure I got back to them with some answers. And I understand this is all fluid and things change, but whatever you have today would be great. Thank you.
Representative, there probably will be some non-negotiables that reflect thinking from our Division of Public Health and possibly even the CDC. So we'll have some pieces that I think will be expected of all schools in Delaware to follow as a part of their plan for moving forward. We do honor local control here in Delaware, so I'm sure flexibility, as you mentioned, will be built in as well. But there will, I'm sure, depending on the scenario, be some expectations that will apply to all schools. I do know that with our recent guidance given out about graduation, private schools are expected to follow those same guidelines. So that's a good question for us to pursue a bit further, but that would be my first reaction.
Great. Thank you, Madam Secretary.
So I have a question that was put in the chat box. One was Representative Williams. She had asked for the information around Opportunity Labs, and I will send that out to each of the groups after this. The other was, what should committee members do if they receive an email or call from someone with input on the committee's work?
We will reiterate the ways that public members can be involved in this process to make sure that all the information, the concerns, the questions, and so forth go to the working group that is applicable. We ask that public comment be either entered into our website, our email. We'll give that address again at the end, but we will highly publicize that email address. And if they truly want to have their question or comment reflected upon by the working group, they need to put it in that official basis. So sending something privately to a community or working group member is not going to get it filed with the right sources for it to be a part of the conversation. We also, as I mentioned earlier, have a voicemail that is specifically set up to take concerns, questions, comments from our public. And we do urge everyone to use that source as well. We will transcribe those questions or comments and place them on our DOE website so that everyone has access to them. And that's what we're trying to do, if you'll remember, is to be totally transparent, totally inclusive. And so we have those two public ways of making sure that we accept comments, and then we will publicize those on our website.
Thank you, Dr. Bunting. If it's okay with you, we have 3 questions that are very similar, and I think I can answer them in about 2 sentences. Just to give an update around a follow-up to what Dr. Bunting had just said, yes, everyone will have access to the public comments. All of the public comments will be shared across the teams because they're so similar, but they'll be separated also to try and help the committees or the working groups really focus in on their areas. And then we'll also be posting all public comments on our DOE webpage. So even if they were, whether they were emails or a call on our phone, everything will be shared via our webpage weekly.
And Christine, I reiterate, to make sure that that happens, they need to be either entered on that email, through that email, or through that phone line. If you send them to a member of the working groups, that process will not be intact. So we really urge you to be a part of this. And I might share that we've had many requests from people across the state to be added to these work groups, but to make sure that we were able to make progress and get something accomplished, there has to be a limit to the size of the groups. And that is why we're so intent on involving as many people as we can through this input, through the phone line or through the email system. So we really do urge you to be a part of that.
Dr. Bunting, will all meetings be live streamed in this way?
Yes. All of them will be open to the public. And again, we are trying to be transparent and inclusive.
Just give it another minute in case people are still processing. There we go. With the diverse composition of the state's demographics, how can we assure that all ethnicity, cultures, backgrounds are equally represented?
We made an ardent effort as the committee, the working groups were comprised, to make sure that we reflected the diversity of our state. We certainly hope that the members of our working groups will be in contact with various groups and community members and bring back the input that they gather. So we've tried, we've diligently tried to make sure that we reflect the picture of Delaware, the picture of Delawareans. And yet we know that we can't always have as much representation of certain voices as others. So through our system of gathering information, we hope to even have a greater voice from diverse members of our community.
Just waiting a minute.
I have just one last question. Sorry, it's Representative Smith again. My apologies. How often will the working groups be making recommendations?
They will come forth with, I'm sure during their working group meetings, a number of recommendations, but eventually they will be making their final recommendation to my office by the first week in July, by early July, so that we can process those, take a look at how feasible they are, really work toward making them the part of the plan that goes out to our schools. And having talked frequently with our superintendents, we know that the sooner we can get these ideas and the plan out to schools, the more feasible it is that those plans can be fully implemented in time for the beginning of the school year, whatever way that beginning of the year happens to be planned.
So we can have our rolling recommendations, but at the end, much like a regular task force, we'll deliver you a document basically with all of those recommendations in place.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent question and helpful in helping us to frame the work ahead. So this is ironic, 2 questions that literally bounced right off of each other, so they're perfect. I'm going to give them both to you at the same time, Dr. Bunting. How are we ensuring that all working groups are going to be collaborating together so that each group is on the same page and cohesive? The second question is, how can members of the working group share resources and materials with one another?
This is a key role that the work group leaders will play. We will have a way of communicating. First of all, 3 of them are a member of our department, Christine, and as members of our cabinet, you know that we're going to have a lot of conversation about what's happening in the various working groups. And I'm sure that they will include their co-leaders of those groups in that kind of discussion. So we will keep each other informed. We also are all going to be reading the comments, and there will be minutes from every meeting. So that's part of our job, the jobs of the working group leaders, to make sure that they're in communication with each other, and then they reflect upon the written the minutes. And you can always go back and take a look again at something that has been the live version of one of our working group sessions. It may not be that you have time to do it on the night that it happens, but it's always there so that you can watch it at your viewing pleasure. So we understand that this is an important part. We probably will have a similar format eventually for doing the recommendations from that particular group, but there needs to be constant communication. And also remember that we're dealing with opportunity labs, and with our guides there, our guides on the side will also help close the ring so that we're all in communication with each other.
Yes, and in addition to that, the meetings are all scheduled on different days, which is helpful. And we're all using the same 3 scenarios. So to what Dr. Bunting said, it will necessitate the groups working together as well. Okay, here, let me just make sure I didn't miss anything.
Christine, while you're looking, I think each group leader will also be keeping a parking lot list, and I know they're going to direct their attention to their specific area of assignment, yet knowing that what they're talking about with health and safety is going to be reflected in some of the conversations that the operations people have and the instructional people. So there's just a natural link, but each group will have a focus, and they will try to remain very, very attentive to that focus, but take care of the parking lot issues in another way. So there's a connection that has to be made anyway, and they will make sure that happens.
So Dr. Bunting, as a follow-up to that, and you can tell you have people ready to jump in and get some great recommendations out there. The question is, would it be possible to have all 3 groups meet once in a while and update all of us so that we can ask questions?
I'm always open to good ideas. So if that's something that the committee, if the working groups would like, we certainly can arrange it.
And one of the things that we're navigating through is, because of our need and want to make this transparent, these are all public meetings and therefore follow the expectations around posting for public meetings as well. So we would just need to work together to make sure we had time in order to do that, to get the groups together in between if necessary.
That's correct. We need to post that on the public calendar a week ahead of time, along with the agenda.
We can definitely work that out.
Are there other questions?
I do not see any other at this time.
Work group leaders, do you have anything additional to add to the conversation or questions that you might have at this point? Then I think it's appropriate to thank everyone again for their willingness to be a part of this. We are excited about what's going to begin to happen. And as someone has mentioned earlier, each night, well, for example, every Tuesday night for the next month, we're going to have our health and wellness people meeting. So you can follow that group if that's the one you're very interested in as a member of the public. We're going to have the other 2 nights devoted to our academic and equity. And then on Thursdays, we have operations and services. So you can follow all of them or any of them. Or if you're very interested in one particular group, you know that it's always going to be on the same evening. And I think that's very helpful. But again, anything you need to add, if you're not on one of the working groups, we have posted in front of you again the way to get through to us and make your concern, your comment, your question a part of this public record as we try to reach as many people as we possibly can as we prepare to reopen our school operations. And we are going to have school, by the way, in September, in one form or another. But when we can reopen the buildings themselves, we'll also have a plan that has been vetted and well distributed through our school systems. So we thank you for your time today. You know how to reach us. And I am honored to be able to work with you all through the next month and a half. Thank you very, very much.
Thank
you, Dr. Bunting.
Have a blessed rest of the week.
Thank you, Dr. Bunting.
Dr. Bunting.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Bunting. It was nice meeting you.
We look forward to seeing you again.